I think I'll get started. We're a little bit past the hour, so I'm going to welcome everyone to this live Q&A session for the Deep Valley Book Festival Virtual Edition 2020. I'm Rachel Hannell. I'm one of the people on the planning committee for this event, and I'm here with Danelle Erickson as well, who's going to be helping out with the questions. And I'm here with several authors today too. So the authors will be on hand to answer any questions you have. So this is absolutely your time to ask questions of authors. It's like all the questions you've ever wanted to ask writers. Here's your opportunity to do that. The way that this will work, if you have a question for panelists, go ahead and type it into the Q&A. You should see a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We're just gonna kind of keep the chat as a little bit separate, just for more of a like free-flowing back and forth type of conversation. But if you have a specific question, please put it in the Q&A and we'll be able to see that. And we do have a lot of attendees today, so we're really happy to see all of you. Thank you for joining us. If we don't get to your question, it's nothing personal. It's just that, you know, if we run out of time or anything like that, we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So we'll have about 45 minutes or so for panelists to answer questions. And with about 10 minutes left in the program today, we'll do some drawings for books. So please stick around. You need to be present to win. So if you can stick around until the end of our program today, we'll spin some wheels and see if you win any prizes. So I don't know if anybody has a question yet. If you have questions, you can feel free to go ahead and pop that into the Q&A. But I can just start out getting everybody going here with some questions. I hope that all of you authors that are here today have had a good day so far, whether you've had a chance to check out some of the panels that we've already had here or not, but we're happy to have you with us today. One question that I do have is the writing life, I think, is sometimes a little bit mysterious to people who aren't writing. You know, what people might see, what readers might see. They see our books, right? But they don't see like everything that's gone into actually writing that book and all of the kind of pain and, you know, good things too that happen when you write a book. A question I would have for you is, what do you wish people knew about the writing life that you think people don't really always understand? And also, like, are there any misconceptions that you think people have about writers that you wish you could correct those misperceptions? So if anyone has a comment to that, you can kind of raise your hand and you can unmute yourself. And so it looks like, let's start with Chris Norbury. You can start.
Real quick, Rachel, can we start and just do a quick introduction of everybody? I think, you know, kind of people are kind of wondering, you know, and maybe it's you know, who they are and kind of what genre they write maybe.
Okay,
and
sure.
we can start with that.
Yes, let's do that. All right, I'll go around and call on you just as I see you on my gallery screen. So Phyllis, could you just tell us your name and what you write and genre?
Hi, I'm Phyllis Cole-Dye from Brookings, South Dakota. I'm a multi-genre author of poetry, especially mindfulness poetry, historical fiction, and memoir so far.
Okay, thank you. Marty Meyer-Gadd, what do you write?
I started with a memoir and then I worked on a 3-series mystery for young adults and then a fiction.
Done.
Okay, thank you. Linda.
Yes, hello. I'm Linda Miller. I grew up in North Minneapolis. I currently live in South Minneapolis, and I'm a children's picture book writer.
Okay. You made a long, long journey, right? From North Minneapolis to South.
Right, right.
Catherine, how about you?
I write YA, science fiction and fantasy, short stories, and I do have one picture book.
Okay, thank you. Chris Norbury.
Hi, I'm Chris Norbury, and I've written 2 mystery suspense thriller genre type books, also a short story, kind of a cozy mystery and an anthology. And I used to do some freelance writing for websites and for magazines, but right now it's just novels.
Okay, thank you. Christine Bauer.
Good afternoon. So I write memoir, and my published book is a memoir, those 3 words, A Birth Mother's Story of Choice, Chance, and Motherhood. And I also have written, really, I've been published in strictly the nonfiction arena. I've written opinion pieces and personal pieces. And I do though have and some children's books in the works. So dabbling in the nonfiction, but or fiction, but nonfiction overall.
Okay, thank you. T. Aaron, how about you?
Hi, I'm Francisco. I write sci-fi, spec fic, usually through the Afrofuturism lens. Yeah, I do have one nonfiction book, but even that is more about being a huge fan of sci-fi and other things in spec fic. So.
All right, thank you. Annika.
Hi, I'm the author of Magical Realism for Non-Believers, a memoir of finding family, and also the author of What If a Fish, which is a middle grade novel, and I'm kind of moving, I teach memoir, but I'm moving into writing a lot more middle grade fiction right now.
All right, thank you. Brian, how about you?
Hi, Brian Luderman. I write mystery thrillers. I write the Penn Wilkinson mystery series about a young attorney who is paraplegic.
Okay, thank you. And Mary Lozier.
I was a little late. I couldn't get my audio working. I write nonfiction, narrative nonfiction for kids. My latest book is called Isaac the Alchemist, and it's about the magic-seeking childhood of Isaac Newton, who grew up to be the world's greatest alchemist. And then another nonfiction, actually nonfiction, is called The Fairy Ring, or Elsie and Frances of the World, which is about 2 girls whose fairy photographs fooled the creator of Sherlock Holmes.
All right, thank you. Thanks to all of you for introducing yourselves and letting us know a little bit more about you. Yeah, getting back to my original question about misperceptions about writers or what you wish people knew, and I think Chris Norbury, you had a comment for that?
Yeah, I was going to say that I'm relatively new to writing, just started about 12 years ago and published my first novel in 2016. And what I wish readers knew about authors, especially novelists, is how really, really hard it is to write a novel, a start to finish book. And then by another factor, how hard it is to write a good one. Because as I've written my 2 and published them, and I read the great ones, I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm just proud I finished this, and these guys wrote these fabulous books that they seem like they're 10 times better than mine. So it's really, really hard, but the reward of finishing is spectacular too.
Yeah, good. Phyllis, I think you had something that you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I remember one day I was asked by somebody what it is I do, and I said, oh, I'm a writer, and they said, oh, you're just a writer. And that was kind of an interesting comment. I unpacked that with him a little bit, and he had the notion that writers don't do anything. And so I just want to say writers work really, really hard, and I think good writers work even harder, maybe. And we don't make a lot of money for doing what we do, so we're not rich either. So that's what I would say up front.
Yeah, I think there is that money aspect. I mean, I don't know how many of you have gotten that question after you've had a book that that's come out, but it's kind of amazing to me how many people will ask me how much money I've made on my book. And I don't know if it's just, you know, I grew up in Minnesota. I'm like, you don't ask those kind of questions about money. But it's people suddenly seem to be a lot more brazen about, you know, they just kind of want to know like how rich you're getting or something. But yeah, I think Phyllis and all of us, you know, I can speak for myself. Like, in fact, I just got my royalty check last week. Actually, I take that back. I didn't get the royalty check because it was too little to write a check. So it's gonna come next year in my royalty statement. So if that answers any questions, that's what I'm looking at. Anybody else have something they want to say about like misperceptions?
I think Phyllis and Chris have expressed misperceptions on both ends of the scale. Chris pointed out some people think this is, understand that this is just a really hard, you know, monumental thing. How do you ever get through and do this? And some people, as Phyllis pointed out, say, oh, so you wrote a book, you know, whatever, I could write that, big deal, you don't do anything. You know, I happen to believe kind of that both of those things are true. I think it is really hard to do, but that anybody probably could do it if you, with the right, I mean, you know, some people have more talent than others, but I think it's not some kind of superhuman power that you have either. It can be learned, and you do get better at it. And so I kind of believe both of those things are true, even though they're both misperceptions at each end of the scale.
Yeah, perseverance. That's what I always tell people, that, you know, sure, talent is nice, but really it's about like sitting down every day or however often, but just making sure that you're actually doing it and not just thinking about it. Annika, did you want to add something too?
Yeah, so I think the other misconception, especially for people who are close to the writer, so friends and family, is that the idea that writing is just the sitting down at the computer and doing the actual writing, that a lot of writing is thinking and going for walks and having ideas and doing this other stuff, maybe going to a museum or cooking, other things that get your mind ready to write and to create something new.
I'm glad you brought that up, because yeah, it doesn't just take place at the computer or in front of your notebook. So a question that just came to mind based on that is, what do you all like to do? Like, what helps you think? Like, what helps you think through writing? You know, Annika mentioned, oh, you go to a museum and maybe get inspiration there. You know, for me, I like to get outside. I like to go for walks or runs or bike rides, and that just really helps the wheels. You know, if I've just written something and I have questions, it helps me really think through that. So who wants to answer that question as far as what do you like to do to help you think through things? Marty, go ahead.
My books are a result of NaNoWriMo. Have any of you heard of that? That's
yeah, talk about it in case people are unfamiliar.
It's November, you write a 50,000 word novel, okay? And I did it. I'm a pantser, not a plotter. Plotters, you know, my sister's a plotter. She outlines everything. She's got her characters. But by doing the 50,000 words, every day I had 2,000 words to write, and I'd take it from different angles, because whatever was happening in my life that day was kind of reflected in my writing. And I found that really helped to get me started. That and Loft literary classes, because I took one and I was writing on my first book, and everybody was telling me, no, I forget what I was doing it as, but they said, that's a memoir, that's a memoir. So it's nice to get the interaction of other people.
For sure. Is there anyone else who wants to answer what kind of helps you get through, think through things? Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Rachel. I have to go over to the lake and sit by the lake or sit in nature in some way to kind of recoup and think about things. Especially if I get writer's block, I feel like that's the best thing. Even if it's the middle of the winter, I'll have to get outside and do something to just take a break from it and then just reset everything. The other thing I was going to say, you were talking earlier about misconceptions. I think a lot of people think that we're recluse and we stay by ourselves and locked in a room or someplace like that, and that's absolutely not true at all. But the process is a tough one. I'm also weird because I wake up with an idea and then I just have to start writing right away. So I always keep something close. It's usually my phone I keep close to my bed because I start talking in my phone right away so I don't lose the idea.
Yeah, that sounds like a great strategy. And I'm glad that you also brought up the thing about being a recluse, because we do have a question from the chat box that has to do with COVID, with the pandemic, kind of forced us, at least in the early days, to be recluses. Like, we couldn't get out and do that. So as writers, you know, how were you dealing with those early weeks where really, you know, if you liked to go to coffee shops or you liked to go to readings or, you know, be around people, we could not do that. So did your writing change at all? Like, what were you kind of doing in those times? Mary Lozier, go ahead. Oh, unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually write nonfiction, but I wrote half of a middle grade fantasy just to sort of keep my mind off what was going on. And then what I found was I got stuck in the middle of the fantasy, and that's where it sits now. But it was a wonderful escape at the time. You just sit down and be in another world. So
Yeah, that's fascinating. So just switch to a different genre helped you. Yeah. Christine.
Yeah, I did the same thing, is that I switched and I was working on writing some children's stories and even doing some drawing and sketching and just looking for a different creative outlet in those times, and gearing up for another set of that this winter when things get cold again and we're possibly going to be inside again. So I took it as an opportunity to try some different things. I thought was good. And then I did want to comment on, somebody mentioned the Loft Literary Center, and I just have to say I had some fantastic classes and some fantastic teachers over the years that helped me immensely. And that's even where I found an editor. She taught a class, and then I ended up reaching out to her years later and having her be one of the first real, content structure editors for my book. So I have many positive thoughts and compliments about the Loft for people looking for help and inspiration from others as well.
And on that note, the Loft was kind enough to do us, they're one of our sponsors, so we reached out to the Loft, and they are such an incredible, literary friend, right, of anything that's going on with writing. So I absolutely agree with that as both a Loft student and a teacher. Annika's done a lot of teaching for the Loft. I don't know if anyone else has had experience, but we're very fortunate to have them in Minnesota because they really have this wonderful national reputation. And again, we're just so glad that they agreed to be a sponsor for our book festival too. With the pandemic, did any of you find it really difficult to write during that time? Chris Norbury, go ahead.
I was surprised because I prefer to write in coffee shops or public places because I like that background noise, and a lot of times I eavesdrop on conversations and I see people and I get ideas for characters, and just that little buzz kind of keeps me focused. So writing at home was a little bit different. I can do it, but I found myself really distracted by worrying about my parents and my wife and all these people who are compromised, or they're in an age group. I'm in the older age group, and I was finding myself just distracted worrying about so many external things that I had a real hard time being creative, because I'm working on a first draft now, so I'm dreaming up stuff. But when you're thinking about, gee, what if I get COVID tomorrow and then I give it to somebody and I don't know it, you worry about that, and you can't think about what's the next step in my plot. So it was tough.
Yeah, it looks like I see a lot of nodding heads there too. And I felt the same way. It was hard for me I felt really tired. I was just so tired, and I just needed to take lots of naps and kind of recover that way. I'm going to move on. I think we're getting some questions really starting to filter in, so that's great. We have a question about basically the age, like how old were you when you started to write? Were you writing as a child? I think maybe Aaron, you're the only one we haven't heard from yet, so I'm going to pick on you. When did you start writing?
About 5 years ago. So I'm kind of new to this as far as the writing in a book structure or the novel format, or writing on purpose, I should say. I definitely wrote stories here and there. And it was just kind of like, I mentioned this in some other discussions, but Toni Morrison, the late, great Toni Morrison, has a fantastic quote that if there's a story you wish to read and you can't find it, and I'm paraphrasing here, then you must write it. And I'm an avid reader, avid consumer of content, and there was such a vast gulf, this abyss of content that I thought would appeal to me. And so I assumed, of course, this has to be there somewhere, and didn't see it. And so that kind of pushed me into like, well, then I'll be the one to put it out there, and then hopefully someone will dig it, and then they'll write their version of it, and it'll be a lot stronger than my fledgling attempts should be. So not very young, not that long ago. So I think that even points a bit to some of the previous conversations about things people don't know about writers, is that it's kind of it's a self-applied label. Like, you're a writer as soon as you say you're a writer. I mean, I have quite a few books now and still don't always feel like an author. It still takes me aback when someone's like, oh, and here's the author so-and-so. Like, oh, you're talking about me. That's right, because I have like 7 books. Of course I'd be an author, but it's just, so it's sort of, it's in that nice nebulous state of who you are as opposed to what you do.
Yep. Yeah, I think all of us who write are writers, you know, but then you're maybe a published writer, but you know, otherwise we're all writers. Catherine, how about you?
I was 14. I read all my dad's science fiction books and decided I could do this and just started writing.
That's great. I love that you have just like a very specific moment and a very specific age. Like that's exactly when you started. How about others who wants to? Annika, how old?
I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, we can see it. I'll cue it.
It's my private diary, my first writing. I was just sharing this with some kids at a panel. So I started writing in about 5th grade and have been keeping journals and writing ever since. It's really fun to have all of those.
Yeah, you know, I'm so jealous when I hear writers who have all of these journals, because I didn't do that. And I thought, man, especially writing a memoir, I'm like, that would have been really handy had I had journals. So I think that that's an absolute, just such a huge benefit when you can have that. Yeah. Christine, yeah.
Yeah, I was just say, I don't remember a time where I didn't want to be reading or writing. And, you know, I've only published one book, but I've written a lot. And I think, you know, when you have a love for literature and words, it's just part of you. And so, yeah, I was on my student journalism, my high school journalism, my college paper was a huge part of my life. And just then have been always writing and hope to be till I can't hold a pen anymore or type on my computer.
Yeah, it really becomes part of us.
Mm-hmm.
We do have another question from somebody just wants to know if you have blogs or websites, and that's maybe something that you can type into the chat. I would just let you know as panelists, when you're typing into the chat, just make sure that you're doing all panelists and attendees. I think the default is just a panelist. So if you write to all panelists and attendees, then everybody's going to be able to see what you're typing in the chat box. And because I had that issue earlier this morning, so now I know. Let's see here. If we have any other questions from the chat box. Oh, here's one. Oh, this is always a good one. Who wants to tell us what they're reading now? And if there's certain authors' books that you read that influence your writing, or maybe even in the past has changed your writing or changed the way you've thought about writing? Does anyone want to talk about books or writers who perhaps have been influential? So Mary Lozier, looks like she has one right there. Yeah, tell us more about it if you unmute, and then tell us more.
When I saw that question come up on the chat, I went running out of the room to get this book because I just finished it. And it's just such wonderful narrative nonfiction. He's a wonderful storyteller. He does amazing research. And this kind of book makes me think I have a project that I want to work on, and I'm going to you can learn things from people who write what you want to write. And so I'm running to get that. It's a fantastic book.
Killers of the Flower Moon. I second that. I listened to it. It was a great audio book because of that really compelling narrative. Anyone else want to talk about Phyllis?
Yeah, right now I'm trying to focus all my reading on race. And so White Fragility, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and now just starting Caste. It's not light reading.
No, I just finished Caste, and I would absolutely say that, I'm normally a really fast reader, but that was a book, it was so disturbing, to really just have it all out there. So I'm I read a little chunk at a time and move on to something else. But yeah, it was just brilliant. T. Aaron, what about you?
So I tend to lean really heavily on referrals just because there's so much out there, and when I was in college, I thought I knew everything because I think everyone in college thinks they know everything. I was like, oh, I've read all of the authors that are worth their salt in this genre or this genre. And then people are like, oh, but have you read so-and-so? It's like, no. Oh my God, there's all this other stuff. And so I don't believe I've read anything. It's now it's the opposite. So I'm currently reading The Space Between Worlds. Is that, oh, my light's all.
Oh, it's kind of
reflective. There we go. But it's called The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. It's a fascinating debut sci-fi novel that was recommended by someone who had read some of my stuff. And they said, have you read this? And I said, no. And so, of course, I wanted to check it out. And so I'm huge on referrals because I think that's one thing that all book lovers love to do aside from reading is tell other people, hey, if you haven't read, you should try.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you're writing in your genre and you know other people who are writing in your genre, it's great to get those kind of recommendations. Linda, how about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Phyllis a little bit. I don't know if you can see them up here, but I do have white fragility up here, and I also have black fatigue up here. So it's totally opposite of what I write about, but it's where we're at in our family, in my work, in other terms of what I do for work. And so hard stuff, but good stuff and necessary stuff, but it takes me away from what I actually write about when I write for children.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's nice to mix it up. Marty.
If it weren't for this book by Michael J. Fox.
Ooh, Michael J. Fox, yeah.
Always looking up. I probably wouldn't have the guts to do my memoir because my life was so involved, and it's a good book with all kinds of different going here and there and putting thematically different parts of your life. And that kind of gave me the courage. But the author that I love is Lori R. King. She's a mystery writer, and she, like me, has a theology background major. So she includes theology, history, and she's got a few different series. But Lori R. King, she's got a Mrs. Sherlock Holmes and puts her through several of the mysteries, but that's who I read.
Great, thank you. And if you want, in the chat box, if you want to put down, anybody that you're reading, if we didn't get to you, or for those of you who did mention, just so we have it in writing, if people want to look in the chat box to see what you were referring to, that would be great. It looks like we have a question in the chat box, just as far as ideas. I know that's a really common question for writers, like, where do you get your ideas? And Annika, I know that you had mentioned going to museums. Do you do that to get ideas, or is that kind of just a more like brain break?
Well, one of my early short stories was actually about a woman in a museum. So that was definitely, I definitely got the idea there. But I also feel like any kind of like cultural experience just kind of gets your brain in the right place. My husband is a big fan of jazz. And so back in the day when we used to go places, we would go listen to jazz, and my mind just wanders the whole time, and it inspires me or helps me solve problems. I think the arts are great. Very complementary of each other.
Yeah.
That's an interesting comment, Annika. You go somewhere that inspires you. I think back to the comments of someone who said, well, the time you spend in front of the keyboard is not all the time. And I find that it's in my head all the time, whether I'm driving or waiting somewhere or cooking or whatever I'm doing. And I concluded long ago that mindfulness is really not going to happen for me. My brain is always on elsewhere, but at a good place.
Good for that clarification. Yeah, Chris Norbury. Oh, unmute. Yeah, there you go.
I echo Brian's sentiment in terms of, you're always writing, even if you're not, but I do find wonderful escape at the golf course. For 4 hours, I go and I play golf, and all I'm worried about is beating my opponent or improving my score or what the next shot. So, but otherwise, I can't do anything without thinking about writing, working on my story, working on editing, whatever it might be, or marketing too sometimes, which is a pain too, as well, to think about.
Yeah, good, thank you. One question that we have from the Q&A, and this, I don't know how many people this would apply to, but it's a question about agents. And so for any of you who maybe have either had an agent or have an agent, or maybe you've looked for agents, the question is, are agents expensive? So if any of you have any experience with how agents actually make their money and how that works, you could answer that question. Mary Lozier, go ahead.
Yeah, an agent that charges you do not want. Agents make their money by selling books, and what they get the money from is a percentage of the sales. So it's in their interest to sell your books. So if there's an agent that wants to charge you, and you don't want that, and also like 15% is what my agent charged. Well, mine actually died, and I need a new one. But and I found it's totally worth it. I mean, and besides, if you think you're going to really make a lot of money writing, and that 15% is going to, it's just, an agent is wonderful. You want an agent that will charge a percentage of your sales.
Annika, did you have something that you wanted to weigh in on that too?
Like Mary said, you know, they take 15-something%. And usually they're going to get you a book deal that is at least 15% more than what you could have gotten on your own. And of course, they also open doors for the major publishers, which you can't get into without an agent. So depending on where you want to publish, it's vital to have an agent. So the end, you know, the cost, I mean, the cut that they're taking is sort of negligible because you couldn't get there anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really nice. I know that with this nice diverse group that we have today, we have a lot of different experiences and how people have published, you know, and just so readers out there or writers out there, you know, if they're looking for more information. I mean, there's basically 3 tracks. You can self-publish, or maybe 4 tracks. You can self-publish, like 100% self-publish. You could self-publish by using a press that is called a hybrid, which is kind of like self-publishing, but they're also going to give you editorial support and maybe some graphic support, publishing support, and that kind of thing. Or you could get an agent to try to get the agent to sell your book, or you could maybe directly go to editors of mostly smaller presses, might be able to take, you know, some manuscripts directly from writers. So there's a lot of different paths, and I know that today we have that all represented. So it's really cool to see that, and it's a very personal decision. You know, every author is going to decide how they're going to publish for very specific reasons. A question that we have from the audience, stress, because this year, you know, isn't stressful enough. What's the most stressful time you faced on a project? Any stories there of kind of the stresses of the writing life? Everybody's been stress-free. No, Linda.
Yeah, right. We're all stressed. So I think I've been both traditionally published and I'm now a self-publisher. And part of the self-publishing process is stressful, especially when you have a timeline to get done. And when you're working with an illustrator and you're trying to balance everything, it can be super, super stressful. So, and then I also found it pretty stressful when you're trying to get the copyright done and stuff, and you're going through the Library of Congress and doing all that, and you're doing the copyright process itself. I think it's kind of a clunky process, and so you got to make sure you answer every question right, otherwise they're going to reject your book and stuff. So that can be stressful too.
Well, that's the government for you, right?
No comment.
Because why make something simple, right? Phyllis.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Linda was saying, timelines, when you're given an impossible deadline by a publisher, that is really, really difficult. And then when you've bent over backwards to make that deadline, and then they sell your book to another publishing house who then sits on it for 2 years and decides not to use it. This is one reason why I decided to move to independent publishing, so I had a little bit more say in these kinds of decisions, and any stress that was going to be imposed was going to be imposed by myself.
Yeah. Chris Norbury.
Being a self-published author, I don't have the stress of the deadlines, but my biggest stress is probably when I get the final review from, I use an aggregator, which is kind of a hybrid deal, and you know, they set up the formats and things like that, and they say, they send me a copy and they say, here is your final book. When you approve it, when you click send or return, it's ready to go, it's into the system. And I have that last minute doubt of, did I get all the typos? Is everything the way I want? And I know that it's going into publication and it's out there theoretically forever. And I want to leave the best book I can. So I'm really nervous about, I'm kind of a perfectionist, but I don't try to get there, but I get as high as I can. And that really, that final send really is a hard button to push for me.
Yeah, I feel that in my stomach for you. Yeah. T. Aaron.
There you go. Yeah, I would add kind of just right after Chris is the marketing element. Also an indie author. Love writing and creating, love that process. But when it comes time to start worrying about placement and positioning, even something as what should be fun with like live readings or approaching bookstores that might not have carried my past work, there's definitely a stressful element, because when they say, well, that sounds interesting, what is it about? You know, it's the same thing as meeting someone and introducing yourself, except you're introducing your work. Because again, that first impression, like I want to make sure that I'm presenting this the right way with whatever campaigns, because I don't have the backing of a publishing house or their marketing department. I don't really have a lot of skills or hard skills in marketing. Like I've read stuff online and you follow the steps on like Facebook for paid advertisements, that kind of thing, but you never really know how it's going to be received. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like that aspect is definitely, I mean, I used to have a lot longer hair before I was a writer.
Longer hair, like nice cut, no gray hair, right? Marty, did you have something you wanted to say about that?
I agree with Tiara that the marketing is horrible. But another stressful thing is finding a good content editor. There were some listed on the Loft space, and every single one of them was booked for the next 2 years. I went with a hybrid, and it was a mistake. The editor gave it back to me, and she had run my book through a different language program. So words like was marked as a spelling error. So if anybody has some how to get a good content editor, I'd love to hear it.
That's and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that is kind of the flip side of all of this. Are, you know, there's some scary stuff out there, and there are, you know, like Mary was saying, don't go with an agent who is going to charge you up front. That's not right. But you're gonna see that, you know, there's always going to be people out there trying to take advantage of writers and people who want to publish. So, you know, I think going with the Loft is great, but like you said, they're booked out. But you know, it might just be a matter of contacting, you know, one of the editors who is listed. And even though they're booked out, if you shot them a message and said, I know you're busy, but can you recommend someone else? I think definitely like that referral and word of mouth is probably the best way you can go in this situation, versus just kind of doing a Google search and hoping for the best. And, you know, we're this great community here, and this is, you know, we're doing this book festival together. So suddenly there's like 50 people now that you can reach out to and ask for those things. And Annika, what did you have to say about that?
Well, I think the other thing to remember, especially now that we're in the pandemic, is that you don't need to have a local editor or find somebody local to do these things now. I mean, we just are like so much more comfortable with doing things with people nationwide, worldwide. So the options open up a lot when you don't need to have somebody local, because there are a lot of people are booked up.
Yeah, for sure. One question that came in through the chat or through the Q&A, did you write to any authors when you were a child? Were you reading books and actually going out to like reach out to those authors? Anyone? Tieran, did you kind of?
As a young fan of sci-fi and horror, I definitely wrote quite a few letters to Stephen King, Michael Crichton, and Judy Blume. Judy Blume's
Awesome.
a sci-fi horror writer. I heard back. I did hear back from Judy Blume, not from Michael Crichton, and most of it was just more. I mean, it was kind of little fangirl questions. I was like, "Oh my God, I love this Super Fudge series, and I heard about all the things that you've been doing, and like my mom's doing stuff like that too." And she was just very nice letter, just, but not really very inspirational or anything like that. But again, as a fan, I wasn't looking for that. And actually, to date, I mean, Michael Crichton's off the hook because, you know, he's not with us anymore. But I'm still waiting to hear back from Stevie. I'm a huge fan of his work. Just hasn't got around. I'm sure he's tied up trying to think of just the right thing to say. It's only been 25 years or so.
I'm sure.
So he's
mulling it over.
He's this close, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yep. Maybe try to tweet at him. Try to reach him on Twitter. Mary.
On the subject of Stephen King, I wanted to recommend his book on writing. It's a fantastic book. It's just so it works on so many different levels, and if you are starting to write, or if you've written for a long time, it's a wonderful on writing by Stephen King. Pull it out of my bookshelf.
Yeah, and I would say kind of on that note, that's something too. If you have a favorite kind of writing instructional book, you could put it in the chat box too. I know that's always a fun question to ask of people. Yeah, I could go get mine too. I think like how many of us have the Stephen King book? I was just rereading it too this summer. I was just rereading it. So it's one of those to go back to quite often. But did anyone else try to reach out to authors as kids? You know, I see a lot of head shaking. I feel this, I didn't. I mean, I didn't know you could even do that. You know, like I wouldn't have even thought that, oh, here's my favorite book and my favorite author. I think I'll write them a letter. Like they were, I think, kind of untouchable. So maybe if we're of a certain age, we just didn't even think to, you know, and like nothing like this was going on when I was a kid. Like writers, like you just didn't see writers. Maybe you saw the super famous ones or something. But there were like no writing festivals or anything. Christine, yeah.
I was going to say, I don't remember writing to anybody other than Carol Burnett as a child, and she did write me back. But I did, when I was working on my book, I reached out to a woman who wrote a memoir that inspired me, because I was like, I know I can get my book published if she did. Anyway, I did not hear back from her, but I did then use information from her to contact her agent, and at least had some connection with her agent. So it's never too late to reach out to people that you admire, I think. And Stephen King, I'm sure he's going to get back to you, Erin.
Yes.
Erin.
For sure. Phyllis, yeah.
Well, first I want to say, if I were Stephen King, I would be getting back to Erin. But that's just a way to say that on the flip side of this question, the more books you get out there, the more communication you have with readers. And, you know, that takes a good chunk of my morning every morning, and I love it. I used to really resent marketing because I wanted to be writing, and the marketing seemed to take me away from that. And there were other things too. But anyway, when I started to reframe marketing in terms of developing relationships with readers, that really changed my attitude, and it's really enriched my experience as a writer. And I really value being able to communicate with people who take time not only to read my work, but to get in touch with me about it. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, I can speak for probably all of us that absolutely we would want to hear from our readers. You know, it's just lovely. And I think all of us would write back. You know, we wouldn't pull the Stephen King. Like if somebody took the time to write to us, we're going to write back and try to help them out. Chris, did you have something you wanted to add? Chris Norberry?
Yeah, I wanted to echo what Phyllis said about communicating with readers is great. I just did a book club last week, and I've done several of those. Those are really wonderful when they read the book and they have intelligent questions and you have a lively discussion. Meeting people at book signings, which we can't do anymore, is just, it's a highlight of the day. But also as a self-taught writer and starting rather late in life, I wanted to echo the support of other authors who had more experience than me in being willing to help me answer questions, help me, you know, teach me things, connect me. Like one writer who makes a living at it, actually makes a really good living at it, gave me the name of her book cover designer. And he's just absolutely fabulous, is very reasonable, and I'm going to stick with him as long as I'm writing books in that genre because it's great. So author to author communication is, that was impressed. I'm really impressed with that and how everybody's willing to share their opinion or some ideas with you if you ask them.
Yeah, I think that networking thing, like I can't talk about it enough. You know, it's just networking with other authors. I just shot a friend of mine a message yesterday. I was like, can you help me can you put me in touch with your agents? You know, he's like, sure, I'll send a message. So just things like that can be really helpful. One question we have in the chat, and we have about 5 minutes left for questions. So if anybody has any burning questions they want to ask, make sure you get those in. But Linda, I think you had been talking about the ISBN earlier. here. So we just have a question. It's a pretty specific question about ISBN numbers. Does anyone know if you had a number from like 25 years ago, is it still good? Like, do they live on in perpetuity? Does anyone know, right? Yeah, Mary, looks like some nodding heads there. Looks like it would still be good. Okay, it seems like it, but again, I'm no expert there.
So what I know, Rachel, is that as long as it's the same book, the number never changes. It's with
Okay.
that book for life.
It's just always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you. Let's see. Looks like I maybe answered all of the questions. Oh, here's a question I have if anybody wants to answer it. Kind of that balance, like that work-life balance or that writing-life balance. I assume you all have either families, spouses, kids, pets, friends, maybe other jobs, day jobs. How do you kind of like deal with that? You know, how do you make sure you have time to write, but also time to take care of these other really important things in your life? Who wants to tackle that one? Catherine, go ahead.
Back when I had a day job, I'm retired now, I would get up early in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and just write.
Wow.
And then start the morning process. And nowadays my bird decides she wants to go to bed around 6. So it's like, okay, now it's my writing time because I don't have this bird trying to look at the laptop screen.
I never thought about a bird. I think about dogs and cats, you know, as being really needy, but sure, birds, I can see that too. Anyone else want to talk about, Annika, you want to talk about that?
So my day job is doing freelance web design for artists and copy editing. So it's sitting at the computer, and then I have a kid and spouse who's now in my office during the day. So writing has been extremely challenging. So the best way that I find is that I go by myself to my family's cabin in northern Minnesota, and just 2 days, even 24 hours, just to have some solid time and escape from social media and the news and everything too. And once I kind of get that going, then I'm better at kind of that scattershot writing time at home.
Yeah, that's great. I think anytime you can escape, and even if it's not like you said, just even social media, you know, if you have to stay home, you stay home, but just say, I'm not partaking in any media for the next 24, 48 hours, you could probably get a lot done. Christine, how about you?
Yeah, I have to admit I'm not in a good routine right now. I started a new full-time job about a year ago and do a lot of writing and intense 8-hour, 9, 10-hour days at a computer. So it is hard then to switch gears. So I just want to second that what Annika said, that it is good and I need to do this too. And I did it several times when I was in the deep process of my book, is that I went away to family cabins. I rented a hotel room one weekend and just hunkered down and wrote, to have just that totally focused time to dedicate to the craft and not be distracted. So if you can do that, I highly recommend it. And yeah, now I just need to get back into a routine because it's here and there rather than a focused time.
Yeah, that's great. Anyone else want to weigh in on that question? Phyllis?
Yeah, it's a constant negotiation, but I try to keep my business side of my writing in the morning, and then in the afternoon, it's all writing time, and evening is always family time. Compartmentalization really helps me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we're getting to about 10 minutes left, and so this is where I do want to just switch gears and do the drawings. And I know that the drawings for books that we have going on right now are your books. So some of you had donated books for this. So as we go ahead and draw for those, if you want to, you know, we'll know like whose book is coming up. So if you wanted to say a little bit about the book, and there was a very nice question also in the Q&A. I'll just address it super quick. They want to know what I write. So I write nonfiction. I have a memoir and I'm working on narrative nonfiction. So I like to be squarely in that nonfiction world. All right, so Danelle, this is so cool. If you weren't here in the morning session, the little spinny wheel.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got 6 books, and so I am going to put in the chat kind of the author and the book, as well as a link to their author directory. Like we said before, to be sure to check out those author directories. They're packed with bio information, places where you can buy everybody's books. You know, if you want to follow somebody on Instagram, there's Instagram links and Facebook and websites, emails, all sorts of information there. So be sure you check that out after we're done here. But yeah, Chris Norbury is our first book. So we will share my screen and spin the wheel. And there's Chris with his book. If you had a sentence or two you wanted to share, Chris, feel free to hop on while we spin the wheel.
I'd say just a regular guy gets caught up in a conspiracy and ends up running for his life, trying to do the right thing. And by the end of the book, I've totally ruined his life. But then you need to read book 2 to see what happens after that.
All right, awesome. And so we do prize winning. You do have to be present to win. So is Connie Anderson here on our call today? If you are, give us I'm here in the chat. Or Rachel, if you could check the attendees, like you.
Yeah, I don't see her in the attendees.
All right, we will give the wheel another spin.
And also, if you, sometimes people are sharing screens. So if I don't see your name in the attendees, but you really are there,
Right.
then just quick, you know, yell.
Melinda, are you with us today?
She won earlier.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see. Yeah, I think she's here. Melinda,
Looks like it.
Do you want to post something in the chat? I see your name there.
Yeah.
So I think
So
we
like
can give it to
we did
Melinda.
earlier today. So if you are selected as a winner to claim your prize, if you would email the contact at deepvalleybookfestival.com.
I'll write
You just
that.
put it in the chat there. So if you email your name and your address to that address or to that email, then we will get the book connected with you. So.
Melinda's here. I see it in the chat. Congratulations, Melinda.
Yay. Yeah,
Awesome.
she won earlier. She's lucky today.
She is. All right, and next book we've got here is from Mary. So you wanted to put you on the spot. You're on mute, Mary. Get you unmuted and spin the wheel.
She must still be muted.
Yes. All right, we've got the winner of Tom. Is Tom joining us today?
Let's see. I don't see Tom's name.
All right, we'll give Tom another couple seconds in case he's sharing with somebody else.
And Mary, you were on mute, so if you want to give that spiel again, we have time.
Sorry. So it's about a lonely boy that lives in the attic of an apothecary shop where he can see what looks like magic. And he's also Isaac Newton, who becomes the world's greatest alchemist. And it has calculus and how he discovered the nature of light that come along with this story. So I'm excited as a way for kids who are stuck at home to read and learn a lot of stuff in a story that they'll read for pleasure. That's my spiel on Isaac the Alchemist.
Awesome. Well, the winner was Terry. I think I saw your name on the chat here.
Or was it Tracy?
So, or Tracy, I'm sorry, Tracy. Yes. Yep, she raised her hand. So
great.
Excellent. So be sure you send us your address and info. So, all right, next book we've got is by Marty. So Marty, if you wanted to unmute and say a couple words while we spin the wheel. And
Which book?
which book is it? The you said your detective agency set. Yeah.
Okay. In the book, I have all the material I wish I had when I taught 7th grade. Things like you can't say, okay, we're going to talk about how you want to know if you're gay or not, you can't bring that up. But in the book, when the kids question it, it gives you something you can spin off from. Most of them, it just goes over their head.
Thank you. And yeah, it was with Susan, and she raised her hand as well, so she's here. So
Okay, great.
we didn't use that raising hand feature before. That's a nice way.
Oh,
So
sure. Raise your
Catherine,
hand. Yep.
we've got yours here. So go ahead and unmute yourself and give us a few words while we spin the
Short
wheel.
stories, both fantasy and science fiction. Some of them are interstellar agents, and other ones are freelance traders, basically exploring with the elves.
All right, Tracy again. I think we said earlier everybody can win up to 2 books. So
Yeah.
Tracy, it's your lucky day.
Buy a lottery ticket.
All right, and Phyllis, we've got you up next here.
I'm sorry, which book is it?
The Emptiness of Our Hands.
Ah, okay. Well, this is a memoir about 47 days that I lived by choice on the streets of Columbus, Ohio. My co-author, James Murray, and I lived in Columbus at that time. And this book gives you a window into what being without a home can do to a person, even if they have started out with seemingly every advantage.
Very interesting. Great. Thank you. And the winner was Terry.
Congratulations, Terry.
She raised her hand as well. So perfect. All right. And then our last one for this live session is from Brian. So if you wanted to give us a
Windfall? Is it Windfall, Rachel?
Free Fall.
Free Fall. Free Fall is a thriller. My character, Penn, searches in Minnesota for her missing nephew, who is a hacker, and he's also being sought by Russian thugs and by some mercenaries because he has the key to something that could send the world economy into, you guessed it, free fall.
All right, thank you. So I think we had Connie, but she wasn't in on the first spin. So Evelyn, is Evelyn with us today? Not seeing her name.
No, I don't see Evelyn's name.
All right, we'll give it one more spin.
And I just want to let people know too that, you know, at 3 o'clock we have the Q&A or the interview with our keynote speaker going on. But that is on YouTube. So even if you don't get on right at 3, if it's a few minutes after, you can watch that at any time starting at 3 o'clock.
All right, and the last one was Michelle, and she raised her hand as well for us. So,
all right. Again,
just a reminder, send your name and address to that contact at deepvalleybookfestival.com, and we'll kind of take care of the rest, getting your information to the authors, and they will send out your books to you. So.
Well, thank you all to the authors for such a fabulous discussion. I loved it, and I could keep talking for another hour or 2 hours. You know, just really fun questions. Thanks to all of you who attended, and those of you who did pose questions. They were some really great questions. So I think we had a lot of really great conversation here today. And yes, as a reminder, 3 o'clock, you can start watching the keynote interview with Matt Goldman. And there's still time if people haven't become a festival friend yet. If you wanted to get into the exclusive event that we have with Matt tonight at 7 o'clock, there's still time to become a festival friend for $25, help support the festival to keep it free and open to the public, and then get this special bonus tonight of spending some time with Matt doing kind of a live thing like we're just doing now. So you can just go to the deepvalleybookfestival.com website and find information there on how to become a festival friend, and we could send you that link. So thanks to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and enjoy the rest of the festival, what we have going on today and tomorrow as well. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think Rachel and we can probably stick around if anybody viewers had any questions. I know we had some after after the initial, you just type them in the chat. If you just had kind of some general book festival questions, how it's working, but authors, you are welcome to step out and go
Free to
check
go.
out some. Yes, yes.
Thanks,
So,
Rachel.
if anybody had,
Thank
thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.